This next video in our Farmer Focus series looks at Mickey Tuhan, a dairy farmer of the Goulburn Valley. He took over the family operation a few years ago after having worked for Reed's Stock Feeds for 14 years. He's held in high regard by the owners of Reed's, Ian and Rosalie, and he's also won Smart Cookie, having passed the Australian Association of Ruminant Nutrition exam. He's a humble guy, and I hope you enjoy these insights to his farm.
I think I like dairy from the day I could walk, pretty much. I can still remember cows from when I was in pre-school, basically. Yeah, if you talk to Daddy, I'd be able to name cows that, you know, were on the farm when I was 4, sort of thing. So I think I guess I like cows, probably. Some reason I had some sort of obsession of cows. And so, yeah, instead of having other pets, cows are generally my pets. I had a little model farm set with cows galore. I used to pretend to milk them and all that sort of stuff, as you do. Alright, so the total herd runs about 160 cows milking at peak, and there's always, I guess, about 70 odd heifers around the place, from calves up until rising 2-year-olds. We run Illawarras and Holsteins. Illawarra started in the early 90s. Before that we had all Holsteins, but I think now roughly there'd probably be 60% Illawarras and about 40% Holsteins. Originally, it was when I was a kid, I saw a picture of an Illawarra in a cattle breeds book, and there's not all that many in Victoria, so having never seen one, I guess it was a bit of a novelty, and sort of pestered my old man continually until he got me one. But once we did actually buy them, we sort of found that their temperament was really, really good and really nice cows to work with. So when you've got to milk them twice a day and be amongst them day in, day out, it's really a much easier workplace if you've got cows that are easy to work with. We also found they calve really easy as well, so we're quite astonished at how quickly they'd have a calf compared to the black and whites when we first got them. So that's another bonus. It's have less stress and less hassles if you don't have to be chasing cows around trying to pull calves out of them because they can't have them themselves. So there's a big plus on that side. Guess it's a balance. Profit's not all about sheer production. You know, you've got health costs and fertility. The other side of it, I think, if you get the transition program right prior to calving and you don't have too many health problems, then you end up not losing too many cows from the herd. So I think that is a big contributor to why we've always got surplus, because, you know, if you get the transition right, you hardly have any issues, and then that's the biggest time. Post-calving is the biggest time where you lose cows out of the herd with health issues and whatnot. So.
My mum doesn't like me.
No, she doesn't, does she? So I think the biggest challenge for us is probably almost getting cows in calf. The fertility seems to be increasingly an issue for everyone, and I guess as cows have produced more and more, there's more stress on the system, and it's a lot harder to actually get them back in calf than it was when cows were only doing 5,000 litres a year. Like I guess the strain on the system, as much as you try and get the diet balanced as well as you can, it seems to be still a challenge to get them to go in calf as quick as you want. So I think fertility, probably in terms of what we could do to increase profitability, fertility probably be the number one. We're always trying to work out ways we can get more cows in calf more quickly. And obviously the amount of energy comes into that. Back in probably early 2000s, I decided that I'd like to try feeding lead feed, because probably back then there was a few people doing it, but it wasn't as prevalent as it is now. And it took a bit to convince Dad that it was something we needed to do as an extra job, obviously, but it wasn't long from when we started doing it that he wouldn't have changed back, because we just found the cows calved in so much better. They even had less calving difficulties. You get the energy level up and you get the calcium balance right, and they just calve a hell of a lot easier. You get less retained placentas, just so many things less that you have to try and deal with after calving. And it is another job, but really you have to go down and check them regularly anyway. So if we have some troughs in the paddock, it's not that much harder to run some grain out into some troughs while you're down there checking them. Yeah, so the transition period, we try to get the cows into the pre-calving paddock, or springer paddock if you like, about 2 weeks before calving. They don't all calve to their due dates exactly, so sometimes it's a week and sometimes it's 3 weeks, but the aim is usually to try and get them in there for 2 weeks. So they get fed ad-lib cereal hay, and then they get fed their lead feed, which we use the Springer 16. So we feed Springer 16 in troughs in the paddock. It has anionic salts, which obviously helps prevent milk fever, and then I think the key to that is it also gives them the energy into the diet that if you were just feeding cereal hay by itself they wouldn't get. To be honest, I don't think raising healthy calves is all that complex. It's really probably the start of it's about the environment. If you keep them in a clean, bacteria, stress-free environment, then generally the rest of it will go fairly well. We feed a lot of milk here, sometimes a lot more than what some of the old school people would have you feed your calves, but a lot of the new research suggests that despite the fact it costs you a little bit more to feed quite large volumes of milk to calves, you get the money back when they come back into the herd. We feed lots of milk, and then obviously you still need to get them to eat their grain because that's what develops the rumen. And we have actually found that the baby calf feed from Reed's, which is a fairly new product, has been really good. It's really palatable and they get into it fairly quickly. It's not cheap per bag, but it's a top-end product, and at the end of the day they don't actually eat big volumes of it because we get them started on that and they get eating that, and then you can transition them onto a 21% calf mix fairly quickly and they'll continue eating because they've got the taste for it, and yeah, the appetite's there and they know what it is, so they just keep eating. So on this farm we're about 80% spring calving and 20% autumn. We have the pasture base on this farm means that spring is a much more ideal time to calve the cows. We do have a reasonable amount of high reliability water on the farm, so we still have a pretty good capability to irrigate, and we're somewhat sheltered from the temporary water trade market. So the pasture would make up 55 to 60% of the diet, grazed, and then the grain feeding about 1.5 to 1.8 roughly tonnes per cow a year, so then I guess that's somewhere around the 25% mark, and then the balance would be hay and silage. So in terms of components of milk supply that we concentrate on, it's really all ties in together. If you've got healthy cows and you get the diet right, then it should all flow from there. The milk production, obviously, if you're feeding them right, you'll get the volume. If there's sufficient fibre in the diet, then your fat percent should sort of follow along, and then obviously protein has a lot to do with the energy value of the diet. So yeah, I guess if you feed them right, then the rest of it should follow on from there, really.